All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Mike Grant. I serve as the director at the Marin County Office of Education. Tonight's discussion is being recorded and it will be available on the Marin County Schools Wellness Collaborative website by sometime tomorrow within the next 24 hours. It is also being simultaneously translated into Spanish, and if our Zoom capacity fills, we will kick over to live stream it on YouTube as well. But before we start, I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Michelle Drake, to welcome the Spanish-speaking members of our community. Take it away, Michelle.
Hola, bienvenidos a todos. Este webinar se transmite simultáneamente en español. Haga clic en el botón de interpretación del idioma que aparece en su pantalla si desea escuchar esto en español. Muchísimas gracias a Marta Butón, que es nuestra intérprete esta noche. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. And thank you so much, Marta, for being here for us again. On behalf of our Marin County Superintendent of Schools, Mary Jane Burke, and our entire team at MCOE, as well as Kat Condon and the amazing group of people, our partners at Marin County Behavioral Health and Recovery Services, we want to thank you all so much for being here tonight on a school night, a work night. Tonight's discussion is really about saving lives and finding a way to come together as a community to address a crisis with the same intent, focus, and collaboration that we've addressed COVID-19 with. Tonight, we're going to get a chance to understand this crisis through the eyes of 5 amazing Marin County High School students who we're incredibly thankful to for stepping up, leaning in, and making their voices heard. A little bit of housekeeping. If you have questions that come up for the panelists during the course of the discussion, please use the Q&A tool, and we'll do our best to monitor those questions throughout the discussion, and we'll consolidate them and address them after the panelists have presented. In RX Safe Marin and Marin County Behavioral Health and Recovery Services team has also offered to open up a lobby at the end of the evening for any of those of you who'd like to stay and talk some more. And we'll share that link at the end of the discussion for anyone who'd like to come into the lobby. So to help frame tonight's discussion, I'm going to pass it to our friend and colleague, Mark Dale, who is a member of our community who we know has dedicated a significant portion of his life's work to saving the lives of young people through education and outreach. Welcome, Mark, and thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it greatly. What a special night we've got lined up. And wait till you meet our students because they are phenomenal, top notch, and they're on it. I just see Henry jumped on, so the tennis match must be over, so that's good. And Wade Shannon is joining us as well from DEA. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce them a little bit later. But the importance of this evening is that we have a fentanyl crisis, and that's what it's been termed as. In 2019, Marin County, out of our entire population, we experienced about 11 fentanyl deaths approximately. In 2020, there's at least 23, if not more. In 2021, we're at 31 verified, and the sheriff coroner has authorized me to say that it might go up to 35. That's unacceptable. And the importance of this is not, you think of people who overdose that they're street junkies. They're not. I've known a lot of folks who have unfortunately passed away from this. And where it crosses into our youth world is that there's a number of substances around our youth. A lot of people are familiar with pot, alcohol. We're unfortunately very familiar with cough syrup, DXM, terrible component within Robitussin. Students do it to get high or lean. Then you start stepping into the prescription drugs. And these drugs are not prescribed. They are used, they are diverted, they're not followed by a physician. And the importance here is, I'll go to Addies and Xannies. Addies, for example, are Adderall. Now, when properly prescribed to a young person as ADD, ADHD, followed by a physician, it's counterintuitive how it works. The DEA says it's kind of like meth in a pill. It speeds up the individual, and it counterintuitively, it kind of slows them down. So it works beautifully in that environment for most patients. When you get into a school environment, middle school, high school, university, college, you've got a problem that occurs where students start hearing that, oh, it'll help me take the test. It'll make me a better student. Or students and parents hear that by taking Adderall, unprescribed or prescribed, it's going to make them a better athlete. No, it really does not. It hijacks a young brain, and it gets into teenage brain development, brain chemistry. You're jacking up the brain, it comes down. How do you get it back up? You gotta jack it back up. It's a yo-yo, and it creates a heck of a problem for a lot of our youth to get tied up in this area. The next thing is Xanax. So Xanax, properly prescribed, properly used, physician involved, it helps with, it's called a benzodiazepine. It's an anti-anxiety drug to help with the anxiety. It comes in a bar that's scored. It's usually about 3 doses in that bar, but it's been diverted quite incredibly to unprescribed population and usage. So it's been abused. So how it works is you're a student, oh, I have so much anxiety. Anxiety over the test, anxiety over my friends, anxiety over the pressure, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, whatever it may be. They start hearing from others that, oh, I'll just take some Xanax and it'll make my life much better. No, it doesn't. And unfortunately, what happens is law enforcement, as Wade Shannon will share coming up from DEA, they have found a tremendous amount of Xanax laced with fentanyl. So then you got to ask, okay, what's fentanyl? Fentanyl was originally a patch. It was prescribed. It still is a patch. If you have high pain or you're terminally ill, stage 4 cancer, whatever that is, the doctor will give it to you to put a patch on yourself. So it gives you a micro dosage. At some point years ago, addicts figured that, ooh, if I freeze it, chip off the material, cut it into my stuff, it'll give me a better high. So that's how fentanyl kind of became diverted into illicit use. It is mowing down people. Our national death rate tied to fentanyl is amazing. When you get into what's happening here in Marin County, it is real. And not only does it devastate the family when you lose one of your family members, it could be, it's predominantly males, young males in this county, but you lose your son, you lose your daughter. I know students who've lost a parent to different drug dynamics. Unacceptable. So not only does it affect that family unit, that in that immediate family and friends around them, but then you get into the world of the first responders, the last responders. In Marin County, we have an incredible chief over at the Sheriff Coroner's Division, Roger Fielding, who, if he was on board with us tonight, he would share incredible information. But the impact on health professionals. And, you know, when law enforcement comes into a scene and fentanyl is suspected, they're told to glove up because it can go right through their skin. They could start to fall from fentanyl. So this is the importance of this. It's huge. This evening is meant to really get this out there and to understand the dynamic that works at our different school sites. Our students tonight obviously are from, we've got a beautiful young man from Archie Williams High School. We have 2 beautiful seniors from Redwood High School. And then we've got 2 more great students coming in from Novato High School and San Rafael High School. So I'll introduce them shortly enough. I do want to mention one more thing before I move forward. This began literally almost 6 months ago when I believe a couple of different parents in the community really started to approach Mike Grant around this. Michelle Leopold is a mother who lost her son at Sonoma State University as a freshman. And Tori Kropp lost her son here in Terraland area. I know both these mothers, and they, of course, were devastated to lose their sons. So as they informed Mike, and Mike talked to his team, Ken Lippy, talked to Mary Jane Burke about this, and I will tell you, over 12 years that I've been plowing this field, Mary Jane Burke has been so receptive and proactive. Her team says, we got a problem here. Let's get in and solve it. Let's work on it. Let's deal with it. So there's a very innovative team that started over 20 years ago at MCOE called SLEP, School Law Enforcement Partnership. This is a meeting every few months that happens during the school year where school administrators, school officials are brought together along with law enforcement from throughout the county. Oftentimes DEA has come to visit, CHP is always there, different law enforcement comes in. And there's report outs from different school sites as to what's hitting our youth. This grouping was one of the first in the state to do this, and I applaud them incredibly. And tonight is a good example of that, because this is really what happened in January. There was a SLEP meeting with 3 of our students, and the response from the SLEP group was like, I want to help solve this problem. So it expanded into this. There has been a tremendous amount of meetings from many different people in the county who care about this, care about our youth, care about our citizens. And it's time to get rolling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce Wade Shannon. And so let me get my proper introduction up here. So give me 1 second here. So Wade R. Shannon is the DEA Special Agent in charge of the San Francisco Field Division, which oversees all enforcement operations, drug diversion, regulatory investigations, and administrative operations from Bakersfield to the Oregon border. And he's going to cover a number of items. So Wade, if you're ready, I'm going to hand it off to you. And I really appreciate you being here tonight with us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mark. Absolutely. Thank you. I'm grateful to be able to speak to all of you in Marin County. The problems you're facing there are happening all over the United States, all over my field division, which includes the Central Valley and obviously Northern California. I do have a PowerPoint that can give you a good overview of what we're seeing in drug law enforcement related to fentanyl, overdoses, counterfeit pills that we're seeing, counterfeit prescription pills. And I can also talk about how fentanyl is being commingled with other drugs like cocaine. You probably all saw those West Point students, those cadets who overdosed in Florida during spring break. They thought they were taking cocaine and that was laced with fentanyl, and the results were tragic. Mark, I need to share the screen with you here, just so you can see the PowerPoint that I have.
I think Mike or Melina is going to jump on this. So Mike, you got it?
I think you have screen sharing capabilities, Wade.
I do. Okay, let's
So.
click on it. And then you all see that?
Beautiful. Got it.
I probably need to go back a couple slides here though. So sorry, my apologies. Okay. All right. Okay. One pill can kill. It's a catchy phrase, obviously, but it's so true. A lot of the overdoses we're seeing in the United States are overdoses based on one pill, not a whole stack of powder, not 10 pills, just one pill. And these pills can be counterfeit prescription pills like oxycodone or Xanax, Adderall. These aren't from a doctor or from Walgreens or CVS. These are pills that are sold on the street that are designed to look like prescription drugs. So it's a major, major crisis right now. The CDC data for the last year indicates that over 100,000, it's actually 105,000. Let's give it that horrible number, the number it should be. It's 105,000. And of those 105,000 drug overdose deaths in the United States, 66% were with synthetic opiates, primarily fentanyl. So you're probably asking, what is fentanyl? Fentanyl is a synthetic opiate. It sort of acts like heroin, but it's 50 times more potent than heroin. And the synthetic part's really a key point here. Heroin comes from opium poppy, and you have to grow that on a farm. You need farmers, you need irrigation, you need fertilizer. Fentanyl can be made in a lab with mixing chemicals together. The fentanyl's coming from the precursor chemicals that make up fentanyl are coming from China. They're going to Mexico, and the Mexican cartels are turning it into fentanyl, or they're taking the fentanyl that they're receiving and stamping it into pill form or powder form. But we're seeing a lot of pills right now, tens of thousands of pills that are flooding across the border, the southwest border of the United States. And they're all coming to all parts of the United States, but they're certainly coming to Marin County. They'll come up through the Central Valley, the I-5 corridor, and then they'll work their way over to the Bay Area. As you can see there, that's a potentially lethal dose of fentanyl, just so no more than a few grains of salt. That's the tip of a pencil. Anything over 2 milligrams is considered a potentially lethal dose. And so it doesn't take a lot. A little goes a long way. So the drug cartels, they get a lot of bang for their buck. It's not that expensive to make. They don't have to put a lot of fentanyl in the drugs that they're selling, and the profit margin on it is staggering compared to cocaine and heroin, which requires more effort to produce and a larger quantity to get the same effect. As I mentioned earlier, counterfeit pills are very, very prevalent. The pharmaceutical industry is well regulated. There's legitimate needs for oxycodone and Adderall and Xanax. The problem is the cartels figured out that if we make our own pills, they get pill presses, which are large machines that will stamp a powder into a pill form. And they're trying to add the right shape, the right color, the right markings to indicate that these would be real medicine, real pills made by a pharmaceutical company. The problem is they're not. And three of the most common ones here, Xanax, Adderall, and Oxycontin. Take a look at this slide here. So what you have top and bottom. You have real M30 oxycodone, and then you have counterfeit. The counterfeits are below. You can see they maybe don't look exactly alike, but they're very, very close to what an authentic oxycodone pill would look like. And unless you're a pharmacist or in the drug industry, the pharmaceutical industry, would you really be able to tell that that's a counterfeit pill on the lower image there? Probably not. And if you're at a party, if someone offers you this anywhere in Marin County in high school or in college, they might think you're getting a prescription pill, you'll be okay, but you could be getting a potentially lethal dose of fentanyl. And I'll say this, it's not in the slide, but when we see these pills, sometimes thousands or 10,000 at a time, we send them to our lab to be tested. And 40%, that's 4 in 10 pills that we test at our lab, have a potentially lethal dose of fentanyl, which would be 2 milligrams or more. And because once again, these pills are not made in a pharmaceutical lab by the pharmaceutical industry. They're made in garages and other low quality production facilities down south. And they're very inconsistent. You can get a hot batch. In a hot batch, we've had up to 5 milligrams tested in one pill. And that would just potentially kill you in just minutes. Very, very dangerous stuff, because you're playing Russian roulette if you take these pills and you don't know that they're really legitimate pharmaceuticals. Another example. So you have a fake Xanax and a real Xanax. Do you all know which one the real one is? Probably not. The authentic one's on the top image, the counterfeit's below. You can see that the cartels had decided to try to make the pills match the shape. They also have those little cuts in it to break it down. And once again, unless you're really an expert at what pharmaceutical pills, what medicine looks like, you wouldn't know that this is real or not. And you can see here, these are for the calendar years from 2017 to 2020. You can see the percentages of 2 milligrams or more. As I said, 40%, it's actually 42%. Every year it's going up. The batches are getting hotter. Fentanyl's drowning the market. And as I say, we've crossed 100,000 overdose deaths. That's 6 figures. That's an epidemic. That's a crisis. That's the worst possible thing. And fentanyl is driving a lot of this. There's still meth overdoses, methamphetamine, but opiates, in particular synthetic opiates, are the driving force right now at 66% of the overdose deaths out of that 105,000. So during the pandemic, obviously, as you students all know, schools were closed. There was online classes. There was probably a lot more time for social media, and the high school students don't really probably remember stories about going down to the street corner and buying drugs, because there's no reason to these days, because through social media access, a lot of these drugs are sold to buyers through social media accounts, through all the major social media platforms. You can just stay in your bedroom or your living room at your home or at school, and you can order up pills from suppliers. You can pay with Zelle or Venmo or PayPal or any of the online e-payment options. Once again, you don't have to pull money out of your wallet and go down to the street corner to buy drugs anymore. It's a global market, and it has global shipping options, and it's a great concern. And as you can imagine, obviously we're working, DEA is trying to work with all of our social media partners. But what they're doing, they're using emojis to hide their tracks. You're not going to get a social media instant message where they were talking about, here, do you want to buy some fentanyl pills? They would use a whole range of emojis to indicate the pills, where to pick them up, potentially the cost. Emojis are just images, but they're being strung together as a new language. And it's, images are a very old form of language, and it's now come back as a form of drug communication. You can see for Xanax and Percocet and oxycodone, those range of icons are often found during our investigations. And once again, so as parents, and as students, if you see these types of communications, it's something to be aware of. Obviously, not all emojis indicate drug trafficking and drug use, but if students are ill and they're struggling in school and they seem different, and if these icons are here on the screen and on their phones, there might be something up, certainly worth investigating and trying to understand what's going on. DEA, operationprevention.com. DEA has great resources. Look, DEA is an enforcement agency. We have almost 5,000 agents in the United States and all over the world. But we can't do this alone. There's also a treatment and an education element to this. And all of those elements have to work together, enforcement, treatment, and prevention, to try to stop drug overdoses. We're all in it. We're all doing the same thing. We're trying to stop drug overdoses and keep people safe. My job's to go after, and all the people who work for me, to go after the larger cartel members who are bringing large quantities across the border and distributing them to organizations, let's say in East Bay. So a lot of the stuff coming into the Tenderloin in San Francisco, for instance, would be Honduran drug traffickers who are getting their drugs from the cartels. They're bringing them in from East Bay and they're peddling them on the streets of San Francisco. Last year, you had over 700 overdose deaths in this city alone. It's way too many. And once again, it's the cartels are doing this, and DEA job is to go after the cartels and the distribution organizations. But with that, all of the demand reduction and prevention organizations are our partners, and we have to work together. Take Back, sorry. Take Back is twice a year. And it's in honor of, well, what we're trying to do with Take Back. A lot of us, let's say you have a sports injury, you're at school, you hurt yourself playing lacrosse or basketball or some sport. You have some legitimate painkillers that you have to take because of your injury. You may only be in pain for a few days under a doctor's care. The problem is when you have tens of thousands of these pills that might be left over in your medicine cabinet or in your closet, that stuff's just lying around, and they should not be flushed. It can pollute the water system. If you talk to every city official, you do not want to flush old medicine down the toilet because it dissolves and it can cause problems in the water system. So what DEA and the pharmacies also, a lot of pharmacies have a prescription drug drop-off where you can turn in old pills. DEA does it twice a year. So on April 30th, we have a Take Back where there are many, many locations. You can go to our website and find out where the nearest one would be in Marin County. But it's a chance just to drop them off. All of the pills that get turned in get incinerated safely and usually large power plants where they have scrubbers on the smokestacks. And then once these pills are no longer needed, we get them off the street. And that prevents temptation. It prevents accidental overdoses. If someone gets them, it could even be a small child who just sees them in a cabinet and starts taking them, not even knowing that they could be opiates, for instance. So Take Back was something very, very big for DEA. We've been doing it for over a decade now, and we do it twice a year, usually in spring, April, and also in October during Red Ribbon Week. Red Ribbon Week, as you know, a lot of you've probably had visits to your schools over the years, or your schools do Red Ribbon events where you might wear red, or they have all sorts of red t-shirts or ribbons around the school. That's also in October, and it's a major way for DEA to get the word out into the community to drug awareness and to try to save lives. That's what we're all here for, is to save lives. All right, Mark, that's excellent. All I have.
Wade, thank you so much. I'm going to I'm going to have just a minor discussion with you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Going into fentanyl, there's three waves that have kind of hit the U.S. Can you just verbally address for us the first wave that took the U.S.?
Well, I mean, fentanyl's the last wave, but it all started with heroin, right? Heroin was the one of the first waves, and it's obviously, you probably recall heroin addicts and shooting up, and it's all led to where we are now with what we have is with fentanyl, which is, once again, it's an opiate. But unlike earlier waves, it's not a organic product. It's completely chemically made. You don't have to grow it. You don't have to have fertilizer. And as I say, it doesn't take a lot. So the potency is much greater. Once I said 50 times greater than heroin. So, in the old days, you would have people shooting up heroin. It still exists. You can go to the Tenderloin and see it today. But pills are tidy. They're easy to transport. It's easy to sell because you have a very set dose. You don't have a bunch of messy powders. And I think there's not a stigma with taking pills. A lot of people take vitamins, aspirin, Tylenol, all of these pills. So when you see these counterfeit pills, you don't know they're counterfeit. You could be taking them, and it's a major, major problem.
And I know with Oxy, that was also a big hit.
It was oxycodone, of course. And so the pharmaceutical industry is heavily regulated. Everyone who prescribes drugs needs a DEA registrant number. And with that number, a doctor can write you a prescription for a painkiller. You all probably have heard about the Sackler family and Purdue Pharma. There was lots of litigation related to overprescribing and pushing these opiates, these potentially dangerous opiates, onto the street. And I think with all of the overdoses and the wave where you had all the oxycodone and Xanax and other deaths, I think doctors are working very, very closely with the government and also distributors of pharmacies to track, unusual prescription patterns. And I think that's tightened up a lot. Our main concern is not as much prescription overdose abuse anymore. It's still out there, of course it is. But when you can buy a counterfeit pill for $4 on the street with fentanyl, that would, it's a lot easier than trying to get a doctor to say you have a pain, to go ahead and get a prescription, and then you need multiple refills. That's a lot of work. And I think with the social media platforms, you can now use them to buy these pills, which are most often counterfeit. They're not expensive and they're readily available. And you can just see the problem ballooning up, where you have all of these overdoses now passing 105,000, staggering.
So what I'd like to do is invite everybody, if you wish, to go to dea.gov. It's an incredible website loaded with resources, and Wade's team is loaded with incredible special agents. I've gotten to meet many of them over the years. They're moms and dads. They are people in our community who care about all of us, and they put their lives at risk. They really do, to help protect us. And so I appreciate you being here with us, Wade. Any questions that come, I'll follow them up to you and hopefully get a reply. But thank you. And also Casey Reddick, who is your PIO. I give her the highest marks. So thanks to both of you for joining us this evening.
Thank you. This is very, very important. I do a lot of things during the day, but trying to get the word out about fentanyl and all the drug overdose problems. And if I can help provide education to help all of you, it's time well spent. And
take care and be well. Thank you.
Likewise.
Okay, so we're going to continue on, and I'm waiting for, there we go. So before we take some next steps, obviously the content that we're dealing with this evening is pretty heavy. There has been a number of people in our audience who may have experienced losses. So Kara Connors, who is the head of our suicide collaborative in Marin County, really wanted to share some thoughts with you before we proceed forward. That mental health, overdose addiction, suicidality are very personal and can be emotional topics to discuss. many survivors who miss our friends, relative neighbors. It is difficult. And what I would love to ask you to do is that if you know somebody who's struggling or you're struggling yourself, there's the Marin Suicide Prevention Hotline, which is 415-499-1100. The crisis text line, which is text Marin to 741-741. And then the BHRS access line, which is the Behavioral Health Recovery Services under Health and Human Services, is 888-818-1115. I believe this is going to be going into your chat, so you can get it there. There will also be a follow-up, I believe, to participants, possibly. I believe. So if you need more information, there's going to be much more information to come this evening. So let me step off that and go to my next step. When we get into discussing how this looks, it's really kind of difficult because, you know, once somebody steps into this arena, it is a hard place to kind of figure out. So what I'd like to do is I'm looking at a document here to double check, and I believe Henry is going to go first. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to introduce Henry off of my knowledge. So Henry is a Archie Williams High School junior. And for those who don't know, it used to be Drake High School over in San Anselmo. And he wrote an incredible article back on November 1st of last year that involved some parents who had lost their sons. I believe both Michelle Leopold and Tori Kropp were in your article, and you interviewed me as well. And this article has become a lightning rod, not only in Marin, but throughout the nation, oddly enough, beautifully enough. And Henry has been nationally recognized. He's also received a national award. And he also recently, let me pull this puppy up. I'm going to send this to one of our people and they'll get it on. But it is basically, we're fighting fake pills. And this is part of the Scholastic Choices magazine. And Henry is highlighted on it, along with a couple of other students from out the United States who are fighting in this area. So what I'd like to do now is hand this over to Henry Pratt to share some thoughts. And Henry, you ready to go?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mark.
You got it.
So hi, like Mark said, my name is Henry Pratt, and I am the current editor-in-chief of Archie Williams High School newspaper, The Pitch. I'm the editor-in-chief of the web division. And I first heard about the fentanyl epidemic from an anonymous San Francisco firefighter who another reporter on my newspaper interviewed, I believe 2 years ago, and let my journalism advisor know just how big a problem fentanyl overdoses and poisonings are in San Francisco County. So initially, when I started writing my article, I reached out to Michelle Leopold and Tori Kropp of Marin Angel Moms, a group of mothers who lost a kid due to suicide or drug-related death. And I also interviewed Mark Dale for the article. And I just wanted, if Michelle and Tori, if you're in the audience, I want to thank you so much for helping me with my journey and helping me truly understand how pressing the fentanyl crisis is. And I want to thank you, Mark, for helping me as well. I wouldn't be here without you. So, like Mark said, my article won a national award through Best of SNOW, Best of Student News Organization, and it was featured on their front page, I believe, for 4 to 5-ish days. And shortly after the article was published, Scholastic Journalism reached out to me, which is an educational newspaper that goes out to middle school aged and high school aged kids to enlighten them on pressing issues in American society. So in terms of the level of drug use at Archie Williams, it is a very common occurrence where I walk into the boys' bathroom and I see 1 to maybe 2 kids very casually vaping. And it is very obvious after you go into the bathroom, after someone has vaped, it smells very distinctly of bubble gum or strawberry or all the possible flavors vape pens can use. And that really frightens me, because if there is that level of casual vape usage at my school in the bathroom, I am very worried that this can translate into harder drug usage for these particular students, and it may make them very likely to start experimenting with fentanyl. So in terms of a proposed solution from my point of view, I believe that the drug culture surrounding fentanyl death, actually drug-related death in general, must change. So starting off on that point, I believe that there is a level of detachment that some members of our community seem to have in terms of drug-related death, by thinking it doesn't directly affect me. It doesn't directly affect myself. It doesn't affect my immediate family. It doesn't affect my friends. I don't know anyone who has overdosed. I do want to say that a death in the community affects the entire community, not just the immediate family members of that family unit or their friends or neighbors. It affects the entire community, and more must be done to truly examine how much of an impact fentanyl has on our community as a whole. And also, like Mark and also Wade said, when it comes to fentanyl, one pill can kill. So you don't need to have a drug history to overdose on fentanyl, to be a victim of fentanyl poisoning. And all it takes is one order on social media, and that can end your life. It can end your life. It can end your friends' lives. It can end your neighbors' lives. Just a few navigations on social media, you can buy a pill that can kill you, and often has enough fentanyl in the pill to kill you and 2 or 3 other people. And that's why I'm here tonight, because I feel that that is absolutely terrifying. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Henry. I think, Mark, I'm not sure if you're still there, but I think we're going to pass this to Taylor and Keeley at this point.
Got it. Finally. Whew. Somebody disabled my video. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so let me get my introduction up. Sorry. I hate when stuff like that happens. So let me just pull this up real quick. Hold on, guys. Sorry. Boom. So Taylor and Keeley, and I'll pronounce them properly in 1 second. They obviously were with us at the SLEP meeting in January, and they are both Redwood High School seniors, and they had written an incredible article for the Redwood Bark. And for those who don't know the Redwood Bark, it has an illustrious history of tremendous articles over the years. One that sticks out in my head was one that was done about Molly, MDMA, some years ago. I don't know if Taylor and Keeley got a chance to look it up, but it was about this designer drug that students were using at different school dances, school parties. And I want to do a shout out a second to Principal David Sondheim. I believe he's ending his time at Redwood High School. Coming up, he's due to retire. David has been there and been an incredible principal at that school site, who's taking care of his students to the top level. And I say that I respect him tremendously. So he worked very closely with Taylor and Keeley, and just really making sure that they're in good shape and being able to do this. And so what we've got is Taylor Elliott and then Keeley Ganong, if I pronounced it properly. And so let me get to my description. And so Taylor, current senior at Redwood High School and editor-in-chief of the Redwood Bark, co-author of the article, One Pill Can Kill, Addiction, Loss, and Fentanyl. And then Keeley is a current senior at Redwood, reporter for the Redwood Bark newspaper, co-author of the article, One Pill Can Kill, Addiction, Loss, and Fentanyl, alongside with Taylor. So I'm going to hand it over to both of you right now. Thank you for taking your time to be with us this evening. You got it.
All right, thank you for the introduction, Mark. Yeah, so this project for the bark, this article started all the way back in November of 2021. That's when me and Taylor were contacted by mothers of Trevor Leopold and Alex Movaheady, and they urged us to take this story to the bark and share the stories of their sons with our community, because it was becoming such a locally destructive issue. And so Trevor Leopold and Alex Movaheady are both graduates of Redwood High School, and in the past few years they have fallen victim to fentanyl poisoning. I think what really motivated us to take this story to the bark and work so hard and deliver our words so powerfully was to know that these students were sitting in our places not too long ago. They were taking the classes we were taking, going to school, and just having that high school life. And one thing led to another, and they took a pill and they died. And this was something that didn't get enough attention at the time of their death. And even now, years later, it still wasn't talked about enough. So with the help of the Angel Moms and other advocates of the issue, we were able to deliver the story through journalism. And we're really grateful that they reached out to us so we could share those stories and talk to our peers and get them to listen, because I think we've already seen such a wide impact and it's only just getting started. And I think I can speak for myself personally that before I even started researching this article and thinking about this topic, I lacked awareness and knowledge about fentanyl poisoning. I think I had heard stories. I knew that it was something strong. I knew it could kill you, but I had no idea how fast it was accelerating and how year after year, just the numbers are ticking up and up. And it was just shocking to read these statistics and see the number in 2018 to go to 2019, 2020, and so on. It was just really just shocking to see. And I don't think, if I wasn't even aware of this, I mean, I just think me and Taylor both thought it was urgent to now bring this to our school, and the bark is a great platform for us to do that. So that was what we did. And essentially we talked to the moms who had lost their sons due to fentanyl poisoning. We talked to a detective from the Marin County Sheriff's Department who deals with narcotics investigations. We also talked with the Marin County recovery coach, who had a really interesting history with drugs, and also he had survived 5 overdoses with fentanyl, and just heard all sorts of stories that we delivered to the bark. And the response we got was really, really amazing. And we're really grateful to be able to share these stories and bring light to the situation, because it just had not been talked about at all before, and we're already starting to see change.
And thank you, Keely. And adding on to that, something else we covered in our article was explaining the cycle of addiction. And we really got a lot of insight into that through Marianne Craiglew, who is the mother of Alex Movaheady, who, as Keely mentioned, was a graduate of Redwood and passed away from fentanyl poisoning in April 2020. And some of her quotes are just heartbreaking. She described how Alex really wanted to seek help, really wanted to beat his addiction, but because of the way that addiction just hijacks a young brain, and any brain for that matter, even the strongest of people cannot overcome it. And especially with COVID-19, he eventually relapsed. On the day of his death, he was supposed to meet with a counselor helping him through withdrawal. And that pill that he took ended up being laced with a lethal dose of fentanyl. And so I think that really illustrates how, whether you're someone trying drugs for the first time, whether you're someone who is overcoming their addiction and giving it their all, you never know what's going to be in a pill. And so that phrase, one pill can kill, is really true. And kind of going on to our experiences as Redwood High School students, after our article was published, we received a lot of great feedback and support from our community. Our sources reached out to us and thanked us for the work that we had done, but we also had our principal talk to us and many students around campus. And so ahead of the SLEP meeting a couple months ago, we talked to our journalism program of around 70 students to kind of get their feedback on what we could bring to this meeting and what we could propose as solutions for the community. And there was so much passion to the subject. There were people with anecdotes. There was a student who knew Trevor and grew up skating with him. There were people who had struggles with their mental health and wanted to share how they thought we can improve that side of the issue. And so that kind of brought us to realize that not only is this an issue that is not talked about and not well known enough, but it's an issue where there's a lot of improvement to be done. And so I'm going to hand it back over to you, Keely, to kind of talk about the first part of what we're kind of proposing to you guys tonight as a solution for this issue in our community.
Yeah, so I think we've kind of touched on this earlier in this meeting, but just to reiterate, a lot of students, I think we've kind of heard this narrative through our peers and just through our discussions, like students hear about fentanyl, they learn about it a little bit, know how potent it is, and they just think, oh, I would never come across drugs that harsh. It's not something I have to worry about. I'm not going down that road. But that's part of the problem. There are far too many stories where youth have felt that they're invincible to become addicted to drugs, and it would never happen to them. But just the numbers we were seeing and the stories we hear about, it just proves that this is a cycle that kids get stuck in, and then it just ends up into a terrible, terrible outcome. So that's where we need to reform our education on this, to address the crisis. I think making our curriculum more accurate as this issue is evolving. We've seen in the past 20 years just these waves of the problem where the drugs change year after a couple of years. It's not, you don't see as much fentanyl, or you're seeing psychedelics or heroin or different forms of all these different drugs are appearing on the streets and become more accessible. So if in 2 years there's a different problem, we need to be rapidly changing our curriculum to follow that course. And something that we also talked about is just how one drug kind of leads to another, and how we should have a more holistic curriculum where you learn about marijuana and nicotine use, and you hear stories about how there's an individual who started using that and it led to a more harsher, more potent drug, and the cycle that you get stuck in, it just gets stronger and stronger until there's a tragedy. We heard from the cases of Trevor and Alex that their addiction, it didn't start just before they were poisoned by fentanyl. It was something that was long-term. So it's something that people don't even realize they're stuck in at the time, but it can begin in high school with seemingly harmless drug use, and then all of a sudden it's taken over your life. So we're just saying that in high school, we need to start now and make our peers aware that this is, even if you think so little of it, that this could never happen to you, there's a chain of events that these drugs are linked with each other.
And adding on to that, what we found in our research for our article was that a study done by RxSafe Marin found that out of, I think it was the 89% or some very large percentage of Marin schools that had a drug education program, only 50% of them taught about opiate use. And so I think that really illustrates the gap in education in Marin County. And so kind of the second part of the reform that we're proposing is not only that the curriculum needs to improve, but that it needs to expand. At Redwood, the only drug education that we receive is our freshman year of high school in a required course called Social Issues. And within that one semester course, there's one unit on different drugs. And that is pretty much the last time that I have learned about drug use in school. And I think that definitely needs to change, especially because as students get older, they're more likely to experiment with drugs and alcohol, and they have the most independence. And so I think it's really important to target the upperclassmen with this education, but to basically continue drug education freshman, sophomore, and junior year. And something else that we think needs to be changed in education is the way in which drug education is taught. You shouldn't be reading definitions of fentanyl or cocaine or alcohol from a textbook from teachers that may or may not have experience in the area. We think that the most moving and the most meaningful and impactful education will come from guest speakers, whether that's some of the angel moms who can tell their anecdotes and really make an impression upon these high school students, or someone like Michael Triolo, who we interviewed with our article, who was the recovery coach who Keely mentioned overdosed from fentanyl 5 times, who can really speak to the hold that addiction can have on someone, and can also speak to how you can recover from it. And so what we're asking for and hoping for is improved education with funding for these guest speakers and an expansion of drug education at all of the TUHSD schools and in Marin County. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you to both of you. Greatly appreciate it. And we're going to move on to our next student. And at the end, there's going to be Q&A coming up. So hang in there. We're going to loop back around to you. Oh, dog it. Come on. Sorry. There we go. I'm not Mr. Technology. I'm sorry. So hopefully you heard what I said, but Taylor and Keely, thank you so much. And, you know, the difficulty with doing any shout outs is you're going to miss some people. But we definitely have some great people in our audience who have worked year over year, time and time again, trying to help our youth and students. So now we're going to move to Jessica. And Jessica, again, is one of our incredible students here. She is a sophomore at Novato High School, and it's Jessica Mendieta. Is that proper? Okay, good. And so let me get back to my introduction. So Jessica is, as I said, currently a sophomore at Novato High School. This young lady is involved with 2 different groupings in the county, at the county level. Okay, she's not just being the high school student sophomore. She has jumped into it with both feet, and I applaud you and I appreciate you. So what's going on is that she is chair of the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Other Drugs Subcommittee within the Marin County Youth Commission. And I know that every year they're looking for new students to join the Youth Commission, but luckily you've got still a couple more years to go. So hopefully you're going to be able to stay on board. And then also, very close to my heart, you are co-lead of the RX Safe Marin Youth Action Team. And for those who don't know what that is, you can find out rxsafemarin.org. I think it's going to be in the chat. You'll find out more, but our Youth Action Team is one of our newer teams. And I appreciate the work you're doing there. So I'm going to hand this over to you and rock and roll. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, Mark. So I'm first just going to talk about like the drug culture at Novato, and then tie that into my call to actions, just so you guys kind of have an idea of what I'm going to be talking about. But before we go into that, I kind of just want to give like a brief overview about the Marin County Youth Commission and the RX Safe Marin Youth Action Team. So the Marin County Youth Commission, like Mark said, is a commission of youth from different parts of Marin, and each group or each student works under a different group under a different topic. So I chose to work under substance use. And so this year, our subcommittee's main goals have just been to do like Narcan trainings and distributions to get Narcan out into the community. And then the RX Safe Marin Youth Action Team has had super similar goals with just getting more people educated on Narcan, trying to find a suitable curriculum that like includes harm reduction, but is also preventative, and just like doing Narcan trainings and distributions, like I said. But so moving on to my observations at Novato High School, I've definitely seen, like Henry mentioned, a lot more like vaping than uses of like I guess like harder substances. And I think that Novato has, in my opinion, done a really good job of addressing this. There are still some things that they could kind of like improve on. Like I think 2 weeks ago they took off like the locks to one of the bathrooms because people would go in there to vape, kind of to like prevent that. And it hasn't done a super effective job. But I think kind of looking past that, I know Novato has a care navigator, Christina Tejada. I don't know if she's here, but she's been doing like some amazing work, basically just supporting students who do use substances, and kind of just like talking to them, not encouraging any more substance use, but just having open dialogue with them, and then supporting them on their road to recovery, and just helping them like navigate that whole situation, since it can be a lot for one person and like a high schooler too. It can be a lot for like one high schooler to take on by themselves. So she's done like a really good job of supporting students. And Talia will go more into the care navigator role, since Sam Rafael also has a care navigator. But in terms of, I guess, like the youth commission and things we've been doing, a few weeks ago we did a Narcan training at Archie Williams High School, and it was like super effective. I think like a lot of the students seemed really engaged, and we did this to a peer resource class of theirs, so it wasn't school wide or anything. It was to one class period, but I think it was still super effective, and everyone seemed like super interested in it. And we had like a ton of questions, which kind of reinforced the whole idea that students were super interested in learning about what they can do to combat overdoses and the fentanyl crisis, which, as we all kind of know now, is really devastating for Marin's population. And so we're kind of just working on doing more of these Narcan trainings and distributions to schools. But another thing that we could also do to combat this fentanyl crisis is just implement a more I guess the right word would kind of be like, maybe not wholesome, but just a curriculum that's more like suitable for like the audience. So instead of doing kind of something that's like super preventative based, doing something that includes like harm reduction, like teaching about like fentanyl test strips to avoid fentanyl if you are going to be using drugs. Because I think in like teen culture, I think it's like super common to use drugs, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good thing, but it's not really good to just say that drug use isn't a part of teen culture when that isn't true. So I think just implementing like a more wholesome or like holistic drug curriculum in the schools throughout Marin is like super critical to just informing the next generation of Marin residents about what they can do to combat overdoses and combat the fentanyl crisis. And I know in the TAM Unified School District, they already use Safety First, a harm reduction based curriculum. So, if TAM is using it, why can't we implement it into other school districts in Marin? And that's actually one of our Safe Marin's youth action team goals, is to kind of evaluate the Safety First curriculum, just to kind of make like a standard for all the schools in Marin for what information they need to include, so that we can hopefully implement Safety First into different Marin schools, or a drug education curriculum that's similar to Safety First, where it addresses like all the nuances of substance use and things like that. And I just think that as community members, what we can all do to just combat this fentanyl crisis is just to become more informed about like naloxone, which is another name for Narcan, the overdose antidote, so that we're all like more aware of like how to use it and how to recognize an overdose and things like that, to prevent overdoses. Because a lot of times what happens is that someone might be thinking, oh, I'm at a party with my friends on a Saturday night after we had a huge test on Friday, and I think I see someone who might be overdosing, but I have no idea because I was never really taught to look for the signs of overdoses. So I think just as community members, once we start informing ourselves on like the signs of overdoses and how to use Narcan, I think we really have the potential to prevent a lot of overdoses. And speaking of Narcan trainings, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Other Drugs Subcommittee, the subcommittee I'm a part of, is going to be hosting a community-wide Narcan training April 12th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. And I can drop the registration link in the chat. And this training is open to community members, to like students, to teachers, really just anyone who wants to be there. And like I said, I'll drop the link in the chat. And this training is only going to be like maybe like 20 minutes just because like Narcan trainings aren't super long, but I think we just need to start empowering different Marin County youth to just become more involved in these trainings. So like leading these trainings at their own schools or leading these trainings to staff, because I think the more we can empower Marin County youth, the more passionate they'll become about this issue that's affecting their peers so much. So I just think that, you know, the more people that we get involved in these trainings, or the more people we get Narcan like in their hands, I think we really do have the potential to reduce overdoses and combat this fentanyl crisis.
There we go. Thank you so much, Jessica. A+. More questions will be coming. I've been watching the Q&A dynamic. And for our audience, if anybody wants answers that we're not able to answer tonight, please, we'll figure that out. As far as email, it'll come a little bit later. Maybe sending your email. I know the MCOE wellness website is being set up, but this is really important. So coming into, so thank you, Jessica. We're going to be switching over to Talia now, and Talia Harder, and she is a junior at San Rafael High School, and she's youth co-chair of Marin 9 to 25, which she's going to hopefully give a little nugget on that puppy, and member of the youth action team for the Suicide Prevention Collaborative. Is it collaborative or collaboration? And two little nuggets. San Rafael City Schools is where our family attended, and their superintendent, Jim Hogaboom, is proactive. There's no doubt in my mind. I knew him at Novato Unified School District as superintendent. I know him at San Rafael. He is totally behind this, as I hope every administrator in Marin County will start to be, because it's our kids and they need this. We owe it to them. Also, I know somebody that Talia knows closely, and apparently he knew you when you first came on the scene, I think in 7th grade. And he said, there's an adult in that young lady. So I'm going to hand it over to you right now. Go ahead, Talia. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you so much. So as Mark mentioned, I am a junior at San Rafael High, and tonight I'm going to talk about mental health and wellness. So my district, San Rafael City Schools, has made great strides in terms of our wellness development in the past few years. In fact, tomorrow at 4 p.m., we will be celebrating the opening of our high school wellness centers at Terra Linda High. You know, there was a question about that in the chat, so I'm happy to talk about this. We are so thrilled to be opening our 2 new wellness centers, one at San Rafael High and one at Terra Linda High. And along with the celebration, there will be an educational event for parents hosted by the SRCS Wellness team. I'm going to put the link to that event and its flyer in the chat right now. In our new wellness center, we will have an amazing wellness team made up of wonderful mental health professionals, some of whom specialize in addressing drug and alcohol use. Jessica alluded to this, but both San Rafael City Schools and Novato Unified School District are part of the Youth Opioid Response Grant. For San Rafael High, that means we've had the opportunity to partner with Huckleberry Youth Programs. They have placed 2 of their employees at San Rafael High to help address the wellness specifically around drug use. Colleen Conradi is our lovely wellness intervention specialist. She goes into our health classes, among others, to give presentations on harm reduction and drug use. She is also working on presentations in both Spanish and English to help educate our community on messaging in the media regarding drug use, both what students are seeing in the media and how they can think more critically about the media they are consuming around drug use. She also does screenings for students who are struggling with drug and alcohol use, and she then may refer to them to the other Huckleberry employee, Stephanie Alvarez, a therapist who works with students with mental health and drug use issues and is on campus 2 days a week. And beyond Huckleberry's immediate involvement on campus in our health classes and wellness center, San Rafael High is very lucky to have Huckleberry's offices right across the street. This allows our students to connect with the valuable program and engage with their resources both on and right off of campus. However, our mental health resources don't stem solely from our campus. The Suicide Prevention Collaborative's Youth Action Team has done amazing work throughout the county. San Rafael High is one of the pilot schools for the countywide crisis text line, where you text Marin to 741-741, which Mark actually mentioned at the beginning of this call. I'm again going to put the link to that in the chat. And along with advertising the crisis text line, over 700 of our students responded to a survey designed to get data on how many students knew about and would consider using our crisis text line. We are currently working to launch the crisis text line in Spanish so that even more students will be able to use this valuable tool. Additionally, students on campus have worked with the Caring Cards Initiative in Spanish, English, Mom, and Quiche, and this initiative organizes students to write letters to community members who are in recovery. And I'm going to put another link, my final one, to this initiative in the chat. And this article that was written in November, and the Caring Cards Initiative has only expanded since then. So I've given a very brief snapshot tonight of some of the work on one high school campus in Marin, but there are so many amazing programs across the school and in our community. And again, I've also shared a lot of information tonight. And if it seems a bit hard to digest, you may be able to empathize with how some students feel. Reaching out for help can be incredibly overwhelming, especially for young people who may not know about the options that they have. And as we all know, stigma around mental health needs and drug use is prevalent among young people. It is critical that we share and explain our wellness programs with youth so that they may be able to reach out for help for themselves and their peers. Helping our students engage in the mental health supports and programs offered to them not only supports individual students, but our community as a whole. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions about the various programs I've talked about in this next piece of the event.
Excellent. Thank you, Talia, A+. So I would like all the panelists to come on board right now. So if the students can join us, and what we're going to do is, what I think we're going to do is some Q&A. And I've been looking at the Q&A myself, Mike. So do you want me to go specific to anything, or do you want me to just go ahead and roll?
Yeah, I think, some of the questions, why don't you go ahead and go for it, Mark?
You got it. So one of the questions is, before I ask this question, something that's become really clear in the work that I've done is supply and demand. And so much of the law enforcement is trying to interdict the supply. But if there wasn't a demand, we wouldn't have really a supply issue. And so this question that came from one of our attendees is, why is there so much depression? Why are people using the drugs? So please, students, whoever wants to jump in on this one, go for it.
I can go first because I think it connects a little bit to wellness. But I think during COVID in particular, traditional coping techniques that we might be taught about in schools or learn from our peers aren't necessarily being shared in the way they should be. And I think that for a lot of students, there is just a need to deal with their emotions, their feelings, their experiences as high schoolers in different ways. And I think the culture around drug use in Marin County is not talked about in a way that students feel informed. So I think what we've talked about tonight is how, we see maybe it start with marijuana and other drugs and move into these, into other spaces. And I think students, again, I think what we talked about here tonight, the education piece is key. I think it starts with a lot of misinformation and it continues that way, and it creates this, real epidemic that we're facing. I don't know if any of the other students want to add on to what I've said.
Okay.
Sorry. I was just going to add, I think we live in a place that is very privileged and has a lot of opportunities, but I think with those opportunities comes a lot of pressure to perform. I can speak from my experience at Redwood, whether it goes said or not, especially now as a senior, there's a lot of pressure to get into the right college, to take a lot of AP classes. And I think even for students who may not be the highest achieving students, that pressure still remains. And especially when you experiment with drugs, it's almost a snowball effect. In one of my interviews with Michelle Leopold, she explained how Trevor, her son, almost didn't want to go back to class just because he felt so behind, and there was a lot of anxiety from that. And so I think mental health is something that can have a snowball effect, and it's something that can deteriorate in a high pressure environment, which is Marin County.
Anybody else want to jump on? Okay, we'll move forward. Talia, we have a question. Sorry, as you're taking your 9 to 25. Can you explain what that is?
Yes, so Marin 9025 is an awesome collaborative. We host quarterly meetings where community members from across the county come and unite, and it's all about how do we connect and make sure that youth services aren't just being replicated. How do we advertise our youth services? How do we best support each other as youth services providers to enhance the services that we offer youth? We have work groups as well. So along with these quarterly meetings where different organizations present, we have key speakers. We also have work groups. I'm a part of the youth visioning work group, which we would love youth in the county to join. And that we work on how do we create projects in Marin 9 to 25 from the youth lens. We have, again, just amazing community partners involved in this. The county has worked incredibly hard on this. And I'm really happy to follow up with any specific questions people have. But I know we are also a lot of information online, and we are very happy to connect you. I would also suggest we have a great newsletter that comes out, even if you're not directly involved in Marin 9 to 25. It hosts a lot of community announcements, and it's just a really wonderful collaborative to engage with.
Beautiful. Thank you. Also, I want to call out Nancy Vernon, who's an aide to Supervisor Katie Rice. She has been a champion really pulling that together. And I think it's just incredibly important. So any of the other students, if you ever want to chime in on something here, just jump in. So we've had a question from the audience about wellness centers. And in the middle schools and the high schools, I'm going to go to Taylor and Keeley on this one first, because the wellness centers at Redwood came about, and the TAM district came about from a group of parents who were adamant. They went to San Francisco, looked at their wellness centers, they adopted them into Marin County. And so the first one was at Redwood. I think the second one was Drake. I think the third one was TAM. And then from there, it's grown out. Can you give us some insights first, Taylor, Keeley, then Henry, and then Jessica and Talia, if you've got thoughts about wellness centers?
Yeah, I think at Redwood, I mean, we have so many resources, and it's really accessible at school. I think people definitely know about it and know that it's easy to go and talk to somebody. But I will say that one of the problems we kind of heard about from our sources and just had conversations about was that we're hearing about the student or like individuals who might truly need the most help and are suffering the most with mental health or addiction, maybe aren't able to recognize that they need help. And when they can't even tell themselves that they need to go talk to somebody, those resources kind of aren't doing their job. But that isn't to say that the wellness center at Redwood isn't helping. It's just something we need to think about making it more ranging across all sorts of student backgrounds and making anyone who has any sort of problem willing to talk, because some just might refuse, and we need to encourage that more.
Yeah, and adding on to that, I think out of the resources that the Wellness Center does offer, it offers a safe space to go during the day. If you're feeling anxious, upset about anything, they have counselors, therapists who you can talk to. They have a lot of different resources in terms of that. I know they have started doing some Narcan training at Redwood. But I think something that we also heard from our discussion with our journalism program was that there's kind of a disconnect between just talking to a therapist and talking to a psychiatrist who can actually diagnose you with a mental illness or prescribe you medication. And I think a big problem is kids who have mental health issues, whether diagnosed or not, sometimes turn to drugs to self-medicate. I think that's what we heard from our sources in our article as well. And so it's really important for kids, if they do have mental health issues, to be able to access a diagnosis and mental health medications if they need it. That way they don't go the self-medication route, because that's a really dangerous thing. And so I think that the connection between talking to someone and getting a diagnosis needs to be improved in the wellness center, or better advertised for that matter.
Yeah, I would just add on that I think our wellness centers provide a physical space for students. So, there can be services as simple as brain break passes to kind of combat that pressure that students are really feeling. But we also, again, I think the mental health aspect in our wellness centers is really critical. Making sure that students are aware of those services is, everyone is saying, is a whole other beast. I think we have, again, students who may need the services most oftentimes struggle to reach out. And there is a lot of fear in young people, not just around the stigma around mental health, but what will happen as they reach out for mental health services. I think that there's a lack of education about what reaching out for support means. It's this big thing that everybody talks about, but not a lot of kids are informed about what does it look like to talk to a mental health professional? Will my parents be informed? Will I be blamed for what's happening to me? And so I think that that sort of education piece is not only needing to be shared with our students, but our parents and our community as a whole about what wellness centers are for, what services they provide, what it looks like to engage with a wellness center. But the work that I know is going on in my school district, in the TAM district, and across the county, I think is really going to start helping our students, not only with specific mental health issues, students who are struggling, but as a whole, create a healthier community with safer habits around mental health.
Beautiful. And before we move forward to Jessica and Henry, it's really important for the audience to understand that each year there's a shift when the students are progressing through a school environment, and then they leave the school environment. And if they go off to college, university, to make sure they're prepared for that. But it's like a moving target as students go through the school site. And one of the things that I'd recommend is that reach out. If you see a student who's struggling, if you see somebody who's in depression, sometimes it's that student contact or that teacher contact to be able to get them, hopefully, the help they need before there's a bad outcome. Jessica, do you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, I kind of just wanted to talk about the aspect of like stigma that Talia brought up. I also just wanted to say that like I know like in certain communities, I can't speak like for all of them, but I know like in the Latino community, there's like a lot of stigma around like mental health and like reaching out for just like mental health supports. And I know that like a lot of people, the reason they're so hesitant to reach out is because, they kind of know that their parents are like from like a different time, like they don't really understand the whole like, oh, I'm depressed, or like, oh, I have anxiety, So I think that definitely plays like a huge factor into why a lot of people like don't reach out for mental health support, because they know like, well, if I try to talk to, a therapist at school, my parents are going to have to sign a consent form or just like find out one way or another that I'm receiving that like this help. So I think that's definitely a huge barrier. And I think kind of like on like the other side of things, I know that like at Novato at least, once when I was talking with our care navigator, she was mentioning that she like mainly supports students who have like who struggle with substance use, but she also like supports students who like just like struggle with like other mental illnesses, because like the therapists at Novato are so overwhelmed with like all these cases that there's like a super long wait list, because there's just like not enough services for all the students who need it, partly because of COVID and just like everything that's happened these past 2 years.
Beautiful. Henry, do you have any thoughts?
Yes, I do want to emphasize how important the wellness centers are in TUHSD schools. But I do also want to say, aside from wellness centers, I do think more can be done actually inside the classroom, and more can be done to foster a better teacher-student relationship. So whether that's just a teacher saying to their entire class, I'm here for you, my door's always open, you can talk to me about your struggles, you can talk to me if you if you need help. So having that extra support separate from wellness, I really think that would help, because like everybody else has said, there is stigma going to wellness centers. So I think that even having just a relationship with a teacher, so it's not so formal, being with a psychiatrist or a therapist that's at the school, just speaking with a teacher, someone who you feel you know really well, I think that could be very helpful to student mental health.
Excellent. Thank you. So what I'm going to do in the interest of time is we've got about 10 minutes and we're going to come back for some more Q&A, but we do have a lobby that's going to happen when people are going to be leaving this event. There will be another link, I believe, in the chat, and there will be a number of us, the students as well, in the lobby to be able to answer questions further if you wish. And in the Q&A, there has been information that's been in there. So I think Mike is going to address that one a second as to how that's going to be sent out. And what I'd like to do is invite Mike Grant on a second for the call to action portion of this. And then we'll bring it back over to me, and then I'll work with the students and we'll get this to a closing point.
Great. Thank you so much, Mark. And thank you, Henry, Taylor, Keely, Jessica. What's that? What's that? I'm sorry. Okay. So thank you to the students, Mark, Special Agent. I guess if there's one thing that we can take away from this discussion is that it's clear that we as a community need to come together to answer the call. And since the SLEP meeting, we realized that we're gonna really maximize and utilize the existing structures and resources that we have in our community to help address these calls. We're going to continue to invite students to participate on these teams and provide ongoing input and direction. We really need your continued voice and leadership. You really are helping, I think, inspire us. The way just the chat has gone off in the past 10 minutes shows that there's a lot of support, there's suggestions, people want to get engaged. And the student, with the help of the students, we've really boiled it down to 4 action teams. And I just want to give you a brief kind of summary of where each of the action teams are. All these action teams are now up on the Marin County Schools Wellness Collaborative website. In terms of where we're going. Jessica talked about the Narcan training and distribution under the leadership of RX Safe Marin in partnership with the SPAR Center and our MCOA Safe Schools team. We are now in the process of distributing and scheduling training. We received a grant. I think it's the first grant that the state has given to a county office of education for all of our high schools and middle schools to receive an inventory of Narcan. Henry talked about the parent and family education and outreach, and under the leadership of the Marin Health Youth Partnership and their Let's Talk campaign, there's a series of parent discussions. They produce an amazing booklet that goes out to all incoming 9th grade and 6th grade families at our public schools, and they're updating that right now to incorporate fentanyl-based messaging and lessons. Taylor and Keely talked about, improving and expanding curriculum. There's been a team of people meeting really throughout the fall to talk about and understand best practices in drug and alcohol curriculum. And we have a new committee that's forming with representatives from every high school district, with both with wellness staff, kind of clinical staff, and teachers who are going to be meeting a couple times this school year to kind of share ideas. I know I spoke with Jessica Colvin at TAM, and they're going to be piloting a project where the chemistry teachers, I think it's either in 10th or 11th grade, are going to be integrating a unit on drugs that we're all going to be watching closely, and there's still some more work to be done on that. But the goal is to have some implementation of expanded and improved curriculum as best we can next year. Talia talked about mental health and wellness and recovery resources, and there is broad consensus in our community and obviously from the students that this is the core mission of our work at Central. Marin Behavioral Health and Recovery Services, working in collaboration with Marin 9 to 25 and the Marin Schools Wellness Collaborative, will be coordinating to support as best we can the expansion and support of the wellness centers, and also to do direct outreach to the students who need mental health services and who may be addicted, and how we can most wrap our arms around them. There was one question in the chat, what can parents do to help their kids? And I would say, obviously the work has already begun. There's so much more to do, but what every person in the audience can do to take action in your own lives, talk to the people you love, your sons, your daughters, your brothers, your sisters, your moms, your dads, your friends, especially take the time maybe to reach out to your freshmen in college right now who aren't here tonight at this meeting, but may, may be exposed to this crisis, and or their friends may be. So just speak from your heart. Share a link to this video. Share a link to the resources. And I also want to just say, particularly to Kat Condon, the Behavioral Health and Human Services team, who's really taken the lead in following this call to action and bringing us together for weekly meetings, preparing for tonight. And it's been an honor to work with you to this point, and we look forward to our continued work together. And Mark, I'll pass it back to you, and there will be a link
Thank you, Mike.
to the lobby chat, right?
Yeah, and there was a survey, I think, that we were going to do. Nope, that got dropped. Okay, got it. Thank you, Mike. I got to tell you, the folks at MCOE, as I said, are very proactive. All the way from, you got Mary Jane Burke, you got Ken Lipp, you got Mike Grant, Michelle Drake, Melina Boyd. Has been an incredible team. And if I missed anybody, please forgive me. There has been a tremendous amount of meetings to make this work. I do want to plug these just really close. Let's Start Talking. This is the booklet for the 6th grade families, direct mail to families in Spanish and English. And then this is Let's Talk. This is for the high school families. When this came about, this was a game changer, in my opinion. Because when I started, the amount of parent education that was out there was Lori Dubin in Redwood High School doing parent information nights. And she has BTI, Be the Influence, which I encourage greatly for parents to look at. Look it up, bti.org. And then there's another thing that I was asked to mention, Song for Charlie. This is an organization out of Southern California that DEA headquarters turned a number of us onto. And they lost their son, Charlie, but they've been attacking heavily the social media side of this. So Song for Charlie. One final plug I want to put in is something called NCAPDA, National Coalition Against Prescription Drug Abuse. April Rivero lost her son at Arizona State University, and she has been the Energizer Bunny around this nation. And so when you look at what Michelle Leopold, Tori Kropp, Marianne have done to try to bring their son's passings to life, this is so important. So what I want to do is go round robin around the students right now and ask for closing comments before we close this out. So let me see. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Taylor, you go first, please.
I guess I'll just close out by saying thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be an advocate on this issue. I knew nothing about it a couple months ago until I wrote my article, and was just amazed by all of the passion for the subject. As horrifying and sad as it is, we're all coming together now, and I'm really proud of that. And I hope that I have done Marianne and Michelle, I hope I've done right by them in speaking on this issue, and I hope that our article spread the kind of awareness that they were hoping for. So thank you.
You have, most definitely. Thank you. Let's go to Jessica.
I'd just like to say thank you for asking me to be part of this panel. I'm really thankful for this opportunity to get to inform all these community members about why the fentanyl crisis is such a huge issue and what we can do to combat it. And I'd also just like to say thank you to all the other student panelists who are here, because it's a Tuesday night in the evening, and you guys didn't have to be here, but you chose to be, which I think kind of just shows how passionate you are about the issue. And it was just like really nice meeting all of you. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, and we look forward to working together in the future. Henry, thoughts?
Just thank you, Mark. Thank you, Talia, Keely, Mike, Jessica, Taylor, everybody here as a panelist. This truly has been a life-changing experience being a part of this group. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go over to Keely.
I would just say I'm really grateful that we have this platform where us as students are really being heard. I think this meeting has shown that adults are willing to listen to us, and our youth can inspire some really great change. So even if we're just high schoolers, I'm really excited to see where this goes, and it's been really rewarding. So thank you.
Thank you. And before we step to Talia, I want to say you're not just high schoolers. You are really our future. And any loss is unacceptable, period. Sorry. Talia, let's go for you.
Yeah, I just want to echo everybody else. I'm so grateful that we could make this event happen and that student voice was included. And I just really want to encourage everybody that whoever you may be, whatever position you may hold, whoever you may be in our community, it is so critical to be informed about wellness supports and how we can help our youth in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just have so much gratitude and appreciation for everybody who's been involved in this process. It's been tremendous. I've been asked to keep the meeting window here open for 5 minutes at least, so people can transition to the other link. So if you go to your chat, you'll be able to pop on that link and scoot over to the lobby if you wish. And I apologize for any questions we didn't get answered at this point. The Q&A really just exploded, as Mike said, at the last moment. And so I just appreciate our audience who's been here as well. So go to the chat and I think click over to after tonight's program. And also I'm going to do one other thing. There was one of our attendees was talking about Project One Life. I do not know much about it. Apparently a 16-year-old from Ross. So please look at chat there and check it out. And it looks quite interesting. So projectonelife.org. Other than that, hopefully we'll see you in the lobby. We wish you all well. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.